Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us today to stay curious with this curious space influencer, Mitch Rothman. Welcome, Mitch.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to make your acquaintance. We've spent most of the day together. Those of you who don't know, Mitch is a influencer with his Man Space uh, Facebook page and YouTube page we're going to talk about. He's a space geek, just like all of us watching the show today. Chime in if you've got questions for Mitch. Say hi to him. If he owes you any money, don't mention that, okay, in there. But no, we're going to have a good time talking to Mitch. He's really embraced our museum and gotten to know some of our staff around here, and including Marty on there. So I'm looking at my smart tablet here so we can answer your questions. Gosh, it hasn't popped up there yet that we're live. So let me push that button there. There we are. See, it's live right there. And we'll be getting your comments here. Of course, Marty Winkel is on the Streamlabs board there. Marty, this is about our 1,125th show, somewhere around there. So pretty soon we'll get this down pat and know what we're doing here. So anyway, we got a great show here. Talk about Mitch, your space influencing, which of course we do some of that here at the American Space Museum. We're going to talk about how we choose things on Facebook, which he has a great page that's after our own heart of celebrating what you see here on the green screen behind me: Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Skylab, and ASTP.
That's right.
Mitch, good to see you. How are you?
I'm well. It's great to be here. Of course, I've been to the museum before, but it's great to be able to be here and talk about space history. It's great to see Marty. Marty and I we were almost neighbors growing up. I grew up not far from where Marty grew up on Long Island near Grumman. So,
Really? Well, tell us about how you grew up. Were you a space lover as a kid? How did you get involved in this? And you had a professional career too. So
yeah, I was a trial lawyer for almost 30 years. But my interest in space, like most of us, started very early. When I was growing up, my dad was a pilot, and my first
what
encounter.
kind of pilot?
He flew. He had a private license, so he had his own airplane.
Oh, okay.
So we
When
flew.
the TWA pilot.
He was not. He never
Okay.
flew. He was commercially rated, but he never flew commercially. But we would travel as a family in the airplane, in a small airplane. So oftentimes you have to contend with weather. And
Yeah.
we got weathered one time in Titusville. I must have been. It was Skylab was up,
Oh.
and so that was my first encounter with the American Manned Space Program. Really, in person, if you will, where I could put my hands on it, being at the Space Center, and so and then as I got older and started reading more about it, it was just something that captivated my imagination in a way that nothing else did, and I just couldn't get enough information about it. Read everything in sight, firsthand accounts, all kinds of materials, not just the tons of autobiographies and biographies that are out there of the early astronauts, but also firsthand materials. And so that's how the interest started. I was collecting autographs and collecting memorabilia from an early age, and still do. And then after I stopped practicing law, one of the things you do as a lawyer is research. So the interest in research comes to me naturally, and I was able to combine my research skills and really enjoyment of doing the research with my love of the space program, and launched, with the help of my wife Paula, we launched first we launched the YouTube channel, which is called Man Space. There we create original content. Much of it is narrated by me, telling the history of the early program. Sometimes we'll focus on a particular flight. Sometimes we'll focus on particular people. There's original materials that never before seen on some of the videos. Between the YouTube channel and the Facebook group, we have access to like almost 20,000 people, many of whom worked in the program from the beginning, going back to Mercury and Gemini. So it's a great way to celebrate those people, to celebrate the work that they did, and so that's anyway. It was a mix of the love of the research with the love of the space program that really was the genesis of the face of the social media
Yeah.
building.
Well, you mentioned there getting your hands on space news as a kid, and even in the 80s and 90s, kind of challenging. And today we're in the social media world, both of us, administrators for our Facebook pages. It's really, there's so much out there. I mean, you've got a very strong Facebook page with 17,000. We've got 12,000. There's the shuttle, I lived it. There's I love Apollo. There's all kinds of other Facebook pages out there. So if you're like me, I'm grateful for the people who do follow us, and I do
Absolutely.
try to look at some of those other websites. And of course, when I met you, we've become an osmosis of sharing things back and forth there.
That's right.
But it's I mean, you just think back about how hard it was to really get data and stories outside of books and
What
magazines and stuff. And today
it's wonderful to have access to materials of all sorts.
yeah,
I mean, I have shelves full of books, but
yeah,
I'll never have as many books as are available online in my
right.
library, and so it's wonderful to be able to access all this material.
Well, to tell the story, you've got astronauts like Nicole Stott and Katie Coleman out there on Facebook sharing their adventures and anniversaries and stuff. It's a really wonderful landscape to be a space geek right now, isn't it?
It is, and one of the things I wanted to be sure of was there was a niche, if you will, that I was going for, and I like to say it's from Sputnik to Apollo Soyuz. So essentially, 1959, the date the original 7 were selected, through 1975, splashdown of Apollo Soyuz. That's the period that we cover. So as you say, there's a lot of material there. There's a lot of great social media outlets that cover the space program today, to cover the space program, unmanned space, uncrewed, if you will. But my focus, primarily because it's the one focus that I know I have a fair amount of knowledge about without having to dig too deep.
Yeah.
And so, but there's an interest in this stuff around the world, which is amazing to me. As you know, you have viewers that are all over the world tuning in here every day, and so it's amazing. People, the interest, to say nothing of those who live around the world who worked in the program. We have people in Australia that worked in communication at Honeysuckle Creek.
Right. The famous radio station that got the Apollo 11 live.
Right, and they did, the Apollo 7 television.
Watch The Dish if you haven't seen that movie.
That's right, that talks about them. So we have members that are with us from there. Certainly folks that worked at JSC, worked for companies across the country in all sorts of endeavors. And we, like you, try to capture that history, celebrate the history. And so I've done original videos featuring members of the group. I've traveled across the country meeting and interviewing people to create this content to celebrate their small part in the program and the program, sort of writ large.
Well, I'm going to say hello to some people here, Marty, and then I'll have you ask that question from Bob Slater. I'll save that here for a few minutes. But we want to say hello to Doug Forrest in Los Angeles. You know Doug, I believe. Great artist in the industry out there in L.A. Tommy Usiak's watching there from Philadelphia area, Lancaster. Sorry about his football team last night. They got beat by Atlanta. with a minute left in the game.
Oh,
You know,
no.
it was terrible. Dean Babcock will have a good question for you. Good afternoon to you, Dean. Your wife, Paula Rothman, your lovely wife I was so privileged to meet at the Hall of Fame here in May. Paula, he's a little nervous for a lawyer there. I was relaxed there, huh? But no, thank you, Paula, for all that you do. Carlton Bailey says, howdy, howdy. Does Tuesday on the way to the Cape for tonight's appearance, 6:50 p.m. launch of Galileo satellites. Um, he's watching and film at 11, of course. Tom Celentano, a Connecticut boy. He is a big fan of Mitch's Facebook page, he says there. Tommy's brother Mark is saying, hi, Mitch. Good afternoon. Donna Martinez. Martinez, you know her?
I do.
I love your passion, Mitch. Thank you for giving us all this great information. Squeebles. Is that a friend of yours?
I'm not sure. It must
Puts
be.
out puts out amazing content. We love Mitch's work. And up in Dundee, Scotland, is Robert Law enjoying his evening cocktail. In the pre-internet era, I spent a fortune on magazines and used shortwave radio. And then he's always talking about when CNN came on board, and his VCRs are still cranking up at saving that stuff up there in Scotland. And hello, Dave Stengy. Happy Tuesday. There's my Detroit Motor City glass that you gave me there with the little vodka in it. No, not vodka, of course, just plain water.
It's a little early yet.
It is a little early yet, but I'll get to that question here in a Marty, but we want to put Mitch's face back up there. Thank you for promoting Stay Curious since we've met each other through the great artist Chris Calley, by the way.
That's right.
We become instant friends, and we just really enjoy sharing with each other. And yesterday we had a great program with another friend of yours, E. Lee Wilson. Please look at Lee's talk about using space science as space-based art. He's a communicator at the Kennedy Visitors Complex. Thank you, Marty, for booking him in here, and we'll see him.
And does some cool artwork.
He does some very cool art you're going to check out. And we're going to reprise this slide that Lee brought with him yesterday. There's you and Lee together.
Here we are.
Where's that at?
That was ASF, the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, during the Hall of Fame induction weekend, sponsored an art show that featured Lee. Chris Calley was there.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole Stott was there. I think there were one or two others. I can't recall who else was there. But that's the first time I met Lee was there. So
That's Lee's moonscape that has 6 lunar meteorites in it, correct myself, that are at the landing areas of there that he got the coordinates and so forth to be very scientific accurate on there. So we made a good friend there with Lee. We're going to welcome him back to talk about some things from time to time. And we're going to talk Apollo 12 in November, Marty, of course, and he wants to bring on some scientific accomplishments from the Apollo era there. So, by way of you space geeks loving us out there and everything going on, Lee brought this. There's his swear jar and his jar for telling people about space when they weren't asked.
I'm telling you that there are people watching this right now who know me that figured that I did that. But no, that was Lee, and I think we all can relate to that.
That was a great laugh when I saw that from Lee the other day. Hope he's watching today. If he's not watching, he'll watch it later because he's probably giving a tour out there at the campus of the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex out there. So there's our screen grab that we're doing there. You created your logo.
I did. So if
I've got a badge on there. Thank you for bequesting me that.
Yeah. So if we can just talk about that for a second. So it
Sure.
depicts the 3 early manned space programs, which is why the 3 stars are there. It's the golden age.
But Marty's going to say there's a spacecraft missing.
And he's right. And he mentioned it to me earlier. There is no lunar module. I ran out of room. But
it's in the slaw, Marty.
That's right.
It's in the slaw.
Marty and I decided not only is the lunar module in this photograph, but so is the Skylab orbiting workshop. You just have to imagine that Saturn V has a lunar module in it and is carrying Skylab. But anyway, it depicts the three major programs.
Mm-hmm.
The Golden Age, which
Right.
is why we're gold.
I
The
love
Golden
it.
Age of the American Manned Space Program, red, white, and blue, the three programs, the vehicles from the programs. So let's talk. And then, of course, we were launched in 2022, which is what that says at the bottom. Um, and but let me just say something about the use of the term manned space,
Mm-hmm.
because there have been some people that have given me pushback about using the term manned space versus crewed space. And so I will tell you that certainly from the standpoint of selecting a name for this social media space, manned space, it was called the Manned Spacecraft Center. I didn't make up the history, I just report the history. And so using the term manned space seems to me to identify for those who prefer crewed, it identifies a time period. It identifies a time when there were just men flying in space.
Until 1983 with
Right.
Sally Ride.
Exactly. And so I'm there to report the history. I didn't make the history. And so the name Manned Space was a conscious choice, because it sort of is part of the overall brand, if you will.
So you women are welcome as new members.
Absolutely.
Okay, but no, I'm with you. I do pretty much have crewed space coming off my tongue lately, as we've had 79 women orbiting the Earth of the 620 humans who have orbited this Earth.
And of course, women played an important role even in those early days. Even if they weren't in the spacecraft, there were women
absolutely.
that were doing things that without their work, like the work of hundreds of thousands of people,
Well, how about
we
the
never would have got off the
spacecraft
ground.
ladies at
Exactly.
Dover?
The spacesuit ladies at Dover, ILC.
ILC there.
Yeah.
Before we leave this here, what struck in my mind, Marty, I want to say hi to you. Maybe I'm kind of coax you to comment on this. You found out that the lunar module was left off of a important, important mural out there. Why don't you tell folks about that?
Well, in the LCC, I don't know when the mural was put up.
Launch Control Center.
I'm sorry, Launch Control Center. But they had all the manned, or if you will, crewed vehicles, with the exception of the lunar module. And we mentioned that to NASA, we meaning some of the government people who were putting on the reunions. And we mentioned that to someone in NASA. And I don't know how long after that, but the mural was taken down. It's no longer up there.
Oh, they didn't put the lunar module up there. They just took it down.
I don't think they took it down because of that, but it was eventually taken down. We offered to put our own picture of the lunar module out there, but I'll say NASA turned us down.
Huh, interesting. And of course, I love the Grummies because of Marty, and he led their reunions and so forth. Just an amazing group of fellows. I'm sure the North American people are just as amazing, but most of them are out in California in there. But thanks for sharing that, Marty, because it is still a half a century since anyone has built a spacecraft designed to orbit only, or to work only in the vacuum of space, with the crew standing up, and to ability to land on an alien world and launch off that alien world, and could never come back to Earth. No one's ever done that.
It is amazing that it hasn't been done since, but it's also why it's important to celebrate the history. It was just an incredible achievement, and to celebrate the history is to remember it and to learn from it, and that's why museums like this certainly are critical in preserving that history, and that's what we're about, is preserving, and celebrating the history and the people.
Tell people what you think about our museum.
So if you haven't been here, you need to be here if you're a space fan. So, we're not far from the Kennedy Space Center from here.
10 miles across the river.
So it's not far if you're coming from out of town to take a side trip. And you would think, well, I've been to the Kennedy Space Center. What could I possibly see here that you didn't see there? And the answer is an entire building full
Thank you.
of amazing artifacts. So I was posting earlier today, you got John Glenn's helmet in there from Project Mercury days.
And a picture of him wearing it.
And
We've got the provenance.
That's
of all
right.
this stuff.
That's right. And the provenance. I saw you got uh, uh, Bob Crippen's Smeat suit here.
And we
You
love
have,
Bob Smeat.
and we're big fans of Skylab 4, Bill Pogue and Jerry Carr. You got suits of theirs here. I know they were both
Yeah.
friends of the
Yeah,
museum.
Jerry Carr, big friend of
Yeah.
our godfather, Charlie Mars.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've met Charlie. But so there is so much to see here that you won't see anywhere else. It is a destination.
Thank you.
It is definitely a place to make a point to get out here.
Yep, $10 for adults, $8 seniors and military.
A great gift shop.
We do have a great
That's
gift
right.
shop. Thank you, Anita Truex, for manning that gift shop in there. We got William Whiting saying hello, ASM from Michigan up there. Lloyd Franklin, great to see you,
good to
Mitch.
see
Thank you,
Lloyd.
Lloyd,
Good to see
for
you.
chiming on there. And Marty, let's take those questions from, you've got the first one's a good one from Bob Slater.
Bob, my friend Bob in California.
Yeah, good question. What do you think of the idea to create a new federal holiday to honor the first time humans walked on the moon on July 20th, 1969?
Bob, great question. So I met Bob and his wife Mary in San Diego this summer at the San Diego Air and Space Museum. It was for the 55th anniversary. It was on July 20th, the 55th anniversary of the night Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon, and Buzz was there. Anyway, it was quite an evening. Buzz was in good voice. He looked good. He sounded great.
At 94
At
years
94, and of course he thanked the cast of thousands, as they always do, and thanked us all for being there to celebrate. But Bob has been heading up an effort that we've been promoting on our Facebook group to have a holiday declared to celebrate the lunar landing.
Yeah,
And
July 20th.
July 20th, have it be a federal holiday. And he's had, there was, as I recall, there was, a bill was actually introduced and passed out. I don't know if it's passed out of the whole House or just the committee, but it's an ongoing thing. We promote it where we are to try to get names. We're trying to collect names. It's one of the things that sort of a pet project that we use, that we're able to deploy the social media space and promote and talk about. And again, it's also consistent with the idea of celebrating the history.
Well, Bob Slater, I think it's about 50 years overdue. I've always thought, why isn't July 20th celebrated for all humanity, not just America?
Right.
And we'll love to help you with those efforts there. We got another question there, Marty, from Dean Babcock.
Yeah, was there any consideration to launching another Skylab workshop?
So, I as I understand it, there were two orbital workshops created, one that flew and then one that was used for training. That's my understanding. I'm not aware that there was a second, I could be wrong, but I'm not aware that there was a second orbital workshop that was going to fly.
There actually is, and it's at the Smithsonian.
Oh, okay.
The one to
That's the
Smithsonian.
one I thought that was a test bed.
They always did in pairs, things like that. And I do
Okay.
believe that they had that, but they didn't have another Saturn V rocket
Wow.
to launch
Right.
it. So that's a good thing there. Thanks, Dean, for your question. We've got the best, like you, we've got the best space lovers out there with intelligent questions. Tom Celentano says that he was this past week at the Air Force and Armstrong Museums in Ohio. I'm more determined to get back to the Space Coast soon. So I take it, Tom, you were at the Hall of Fame where Fred Gregory was inducted as a lifetime. And I grew up 70 miles north of the Armstrong Museum. And one thing that I've been there, I don't know how many times, 20 times. I was at an eclipse of the sun one year on the property. But they've got one of the biggest moon rocks you're going to see. It's really a nice chunk of moon rock they have.
I've been there, another great museum.
Gemini 8's there.
Yes.
And so forth. And Matthew
Polomic.
I've watched many of the programs on manned space. They're excellent. and include many clips I've never seen before, and that's hard to do. Thank you, Matthew, and we hope we made a fan of you of Stay Curious. Marty, you got another question?
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
Back to you.
I got two more. Back to me. All right. Well, thought we'd talk a little bit about, since we both manage our our social media. Here is Mitch's YouTube channel. Let's make that a little big there. That's what that looks like. And how many followers and how many videos you have up there, Mitch?
So right now it's over 2,300 subscribers.
Excellent.
As you know, it's challenged to put out content to attract audience. But so we have about just over 2,300, and there's about 185 videos, and there are different things. So what I try to do is coordinate the YouTube content with the celebration of the daily history that we do on the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
So daily on the Facebook group, we celebrate basically 1957 or 1959, actually, I would say, the selection of the Mercury 7 through Apollo Soyuz is the time frame we focus on, and trying to find something that was historic for each day, and trying to find things that are a little bit more obscure. So that's the challenge. And then using the Facebook. So for instance, on a day like the other day was splashdown of one of the Gemini flights. I can't
11.
Gemini 11.
Yeah.
So
GT11.
we rolled out
Conrad and Dick Gordon, who we're going to see a picture of you with.
right. So we rolled out a video that highlighted this particular video had NASA narration that talked about the actual splashdown, so that while we're talking about it on the Facebook group, you can take a look at it as it happened through the YouTube channel. So it's combining the history and using these two outlets to celebrate it in different ways.
That's excellent. That's of course something that we do is our Facebook page. We're very proud of it, and all of you that follow our Facebook page. A lot of what we put on there, we try to share today on the show. Not always, but we're keyed like you into space history. Mitch, people ask me, why do I do this every day, 5 days a week? I go, because they won't let me do it on Saturday and Sunday. Okay, there's space history every day of the year, and some of it is minutia that you and I love digging into, the little nuggets out there that meant a lot that people forget about, as well as the big lunar landings and stuff
Right.
like that on there. Marty, you got a question?
You have a question from Tesla Superchargers USA. How to join?
How to join?
I think he wants to join Man Space.
So if you want to join the YouTube channel, look up at NASA Manned Space 1187, and you can just, when you get to the channel, hit the subscribe button.
Now, what's 1187?
That's the handle that was assigned by YouTube when I created the
Okay.
channel. They put that back there. I didn't.
All right, not a tail number of a space.
It is not, unfortunately. I didn't know it would contain a number until they posted it. And then from the YouTube channel, you can subscribe to the Facebook group right there in the discussion about the group, or you can go to Facebook and search us at NASA Manned Space, and you can subscribe there.
Good. I love the Mercury symbol there over your head. We've got that out
Yeah,
at our
that-
Space
sure.
View Park, and just always love seeing that. Well, talk a little bit about your Facebook page, and I wanted to give a shout out to Chris Calley there. Chris is the guy that put you and me together. He said you got to meet this guy at the Astronaut Hall of Fame when he was here in May, and I just couldn't believe how we're like twin brothers almost, how we love celebrating. I, of course, am into a lot of the shuttle era because as a nonprofit, we have to have living astronauts
Right.
out there to help support us. And you look back at Gemini, God, who's alive from Gemini?
Ge-
Four of those guys?
Actually, the entire Gemini 12 crew is still alive.
Yeah, right.
Right? Buzz Aldrin and Jim
And
Lovell.
Jim Lovell.
So that's amazing.
All
that
the
we-
Mercury guys are gone.
Right.
You got
and
Dave Scott
Dave Scott,
and
and the two that I just named.
Buzz and
Jim Lovell. I don't think, off the top of my head, I can't think of any other
Yeah.
Gemini guys around.
Someone else, Tom Selton will find one for us there.
But, we were talking earlier about selecting material and what have you. So
Yeah, tell us about your thought process.
So I look at the Facebook group always more. It's almost like a magazine, as to how I think of it. And it's a publication, if you will, that is going to tell all kinds of things about that time frame, the early days of the American manned space program. That's what we cover, and so it may be a remembrance of the event of the day, or it could be a book. I've done book reviews, for instance. I know David Chudwin's name came up yesterday.
Yeah, hey,
his
David
great book.
Chudwin.
I was a
These
teenage
watches.
space reporter.
Yeah, met David at the
Yeah, he
Hall
was,
of Fame. Yeah.
right? So I've met David a few times. I'm right now getting ready to review Jean Wright's book.
The So Sister.
The
Jean
So
Wright.
Sister.
Thank you. I know she's watching.
Yeah.
Thank you for supporting
So-
us, Jean, and your husband, Ken Kramer.
And I love Jean's shirts. I have an Apollo shirt with a swatch of flown Columbia, Orbiter Columbia material.
She brought me my first COVID mask.
Oh,
that
okay.
Jean made an Apollo one, of course.
Well, she
And then
told
she made me 2 vests. That God bless you, Jean.
Okay.
Thank you.
she told me that the material that I selected, and in fact, one of the pictures that we have here shows me actually a couple of them show me in the shirt. It was a material that I selected because it had the Apollo mission logos on it. And she told me that it was the first shirt she made with the material, but she had made COVID masks for General Stafford.
Yes.
From that material.
By
So
the
I thought-
hundreds that were sold out at his museum
Yeah,
in
okay,
Weatherford.
Right.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of neat.
Weatherford, Oklahoma. We're
Yeah.
going to be celebrating the general here in just a minute as we're going to bring you some space history.
But we also cover film. So I'm teaming up with a guy named Bill Mensch. He has come out with a film called The Artist and the Astronaut.
Right.
And in this case, the astronaut is Skylab 4 Commander Jerry Carr. And
The artist is
the artist is Pat Music. Pat was
his wife.
his second wife. He married again after his Skylab flight. Pat was an artist and activist, a human rights activist in her of her own renown before she married Jerry. But it tells the story of, it's sort of a coming of age story, as Jerry was a Marine aviator and a naval aviator. He was a carrier pilot, and his coming up during the late 50s, early 60s, and the road that he took. And it's told sort of side by side with the story of Pat, who was married to the head coach of the Cornell football team. And as I recall, he took him to their first national championship while she was married to him. And in fact, we're taking that film to the Tulsa Air and Space Museum and the Stafford Museum in November. And we want to bring it here as well. We're using it as a fundraising effort for the two museums, for Tulsa and Stafford. Will be doing screenings at each of those museums, and proceeds from the sales benefit the museum. I'll be moderating the discussion, which will include Bill Mensch, the filmmaker, the original, the composer for the film, Todd Hobbin, who wrote the original score for the film, and also Jeff Carr, Jerry Carr's son, who I know you guys celebrate shuttle, so he's got an interesting story on his. He worked for the public affairs office at JSC. In fact, he may still. I'm not sure.
Really? Okay.
But he was responsible for training Krista McAuliffe for the lessons in space.
Jerry Carr's son.
Jeff Carr, Jerry Carr's
Wow.
son. So
Maybe get him on Stay Curious
yeah,
sometime.
and
after.
Bill Mensch. Well, yeah, we'll have to.
So
Anyway,
look for this movie again.
yeah, we'll
The
actually.
name of it
It's
again.
called The Artist and the Astronaut. We promote it a lot where we are because again, it celebrates that history, and I'm honored to be able to be part of the moderated,
Yeah.
the team that we're going to go see these museums and be able to present this film. And I'm hoping to be able to present it here at some time.
We'd love that, and we're always open to that. We have Jerry Carr's Fit Check helmet, bubble helmet, in our gallery here, in a Skylab suit that he signed. He was a good supporter of our museum. Died about 2 years ago. It lived a good long life into his late 80s there.
And Pat is going strong. I think she just turned 94.
Wow.
Or maybe even older than that. I don't remember.
Huh.
But she was recently at a screening of the film in Ithaca, New York.
The Artist and the Astronaut. We'll
Which,
be
of course,
looking for that.
Where?
Marty, you got another question? We got a lot of people watching today, as we knew Mitch would have a lot of his family and friends padding our numbers here. Thank you for that. Go ahead,
Gotta
Marty.
keep tuning in.
You have a question from Dean Babcock. Do you have any videos about the man orbiting laboratory? The only video I have seen was the documentary called Astro Spies.
It's funny, you and I were talking about this. So the short answer is no. But Mark and I were talking. You had mentioned this because Mark is a big fan of the mole program.
Yeah,
And he was talking about the possibility of us collaborating and doing something
right.
with that. So that's the answer is not yet.
Yeah. Manned
So-
Orbiting Laboratory. Air Force's program to put spies in a tube orbiting to Earth with the Gemini spacecraft attached to it. We just had Bob Crippen's
Yeah.
birthday a while back and had a picture of Bob out at the Cape Canaveral Space Force there with the only twice flown Gemini spacecraft that had a hole in the heat shield so they could
That's
get
right.
back into there. But no, we love the mole program where they had 18 astronauts. I think 12 of them ended up being shuttle or Apollo astronauts in the end there. So, but yeah, good question there. I'm going to mention about some of the space history that we love to share in today's history as an example. And Marty, my button's not working on my image. There it went. All right, there we go. It is Pam Melroy's birthday today. Pambo's 63 years old. She was born on September 17th, 1961 in Palo Alto, California, but grew up in Pittsford, New York. All right. Nicknamed Pambo for her tenacity after Sylvester Stallone Rambo. Okay. And it was a compliment to this woman, as she was the second female pilot and then the second female commander, of course, behind Eileen Collins. And she is now the number 2 in charge of NASA behind Bill Nelson. All reports doing a good job. And if the political power stays in there, I'd say she'll be the administrator if Nelson would step down. But because he's getting pretty long in the tooth. But I like how Bill Nelson's leading the NASA, really. Don't you?
We were talking about this earlier in the context of Starliner and how he sort of was out front in, he was, for 3 hours, they held a press conference when they announced these folks weren't coming home, and Bill Nelson was there to answer all the questions.
And he said right out front, the Starliner's coming home empty, and Sonny and Butch are going to stay up there till February. That was like the first 3 sentences out of his mouth, and I applaud him for not beating around the bush and letting everybody know what we need to know.
Well, one of the things I thought was interesting that he did say, somebody posed the question to him, one of the members of the media asked him, well, is there going to be, what are the chances? That was the question. What are the chances that Starliner will fly again? And his response was 100% chance, because it's a test mission. We were talking about this earlier also, Mark, about how these 2 test pilots, Butch and Sonny,
they're living for this.
They weren't necessarily, I'm sure, weren't crazy about the idea that they were sending that spacecraft home without him. I'm sure they would rather have been on it, right? That's the test pilot way.
That's the test pilot way. Marty, I'll get to that question in a minute as I'm looking at my Facebook page here. And Mitch, some days just come up in space history and you're going like, how could all this stuff happen on one day of history? And that happens today, September 17th. And our partner, Tim Gagnon, is celebrating his birthday. The patch guy, Tim, posted this on his Facebook page. Hi, Tim. As if you didn't know it, here, let me get the data here. This is the birthday of Konstantin Skalski,
The crater.
the leaving the cradle of humanity is what he said. He was the rocket genius for Russia, like our Goddard was. Tom Stafford would be 94 years old today. Tim's got pictures of them all in there with himself. Okay, there's Stafford in the middle top. He's got him. And then the next one, the upper right, is Ed Mitchell. Would have been 94 today.
That's a
I don't know who John Cassana is.
Sonny.
But Bob Seek, happy birthday to you. Bob Seek is our legend of NASA that supported this museum for all 20 years. He was our treasurer. Just an awesome man, a great mentor to me here at the Space Museum. And he's 86 years young.
Yeah, I've met him here. And
fit of health, and his brain is just as good as ever. Launched 57 shuttles. He launched more shuttles than anybody. But more importantly, Bob Seek is really one of the awesome managers that put the shuttle program back on the track after Challenger. He and Jay Honeycutt and people like Tip Talone and Bob Lang really did put that program back on track. The late Sam Durrance died too young. He would have been 81 today. Sam was an astronomer that flew on the 2 Astro missions. Mary Ellen Johnston, a computer gal, wasn't she? It's her birthday. Tim Gagnon's birthday.
the first powered flight.
First powered flight of the X-15 was in 1959. Pam Miller's birthday. The new 9
That's right.
were announced in 1962. Shuttle Enterprise was unveiled out there with the Star Trek people in 1976. And in 2012, Tim Gagnon says Endeavour leaves Kennedy Space Center for good to go to California. And our friend out there, Doug Forrest, sends us pictures once in a while of that beautiful display going out there. I know you get around with your wife a lot. Have you been out there to see Endeavour being constructed?
I haven't been. I was in, as I say, I was in San Diego earlier, but I haven't gotten there yet.
What a day in space history, okay, really. And all these birthdays of important astronauts and people, and Tim Gagnon, the patch guy. So Tim's got, I think, 19 patches on the International Space Station. He and his partner Jorge, a Spaniard, have done these patches for a long, long time. And we appreciate Tim a lot, and he came up with our shuttle shield, we call it, that we use as our logo. So that's a little bit of some of the space history today that I look forward to. Marty, you have a question from one of our watchers today.
No, Mark, we're all caught up.
Oh, okay. All right, well, let me go back here. Mitch brought a good selection of his scrapbook with us today that I think is awesome. Let me get back to my YouTube page here and keep track of everybody. Cynthia Rossi says, hi, Mitch.
Oh,
Vince, he said, Vince, a new member here, he says. Cliff Watson, he just woke up in Pomona, Australia.
Oh, yes.
So how's your Wednesday morning brekkie, Cliff? And thank you. He bought me this beautiful shuttle book that I've been reading at home. Vince says, I love rewatching those old coverage on my DVDs. It's what that last line I wrote in my last comment. All right. Vince is up there, says, I love NASA programs from Mercury to ASTP. I have lots of Walter Cronkite space coverage from Gemini Skylab on DVDs. I love researching these coverage, and he loves watching it in their entirety. And that is some things that you got there. So Matthew Polomic, he says Lovell, Scott, and Aldrin are alive.
Yeah, those are your
So
Gemini guys.
Those are the only Gemini guys we can think of.
Matt
there.
was actually, he and his friend Dave, I can't remember his last name at the moment, but they were technical advisors on a book. I wish maybe he'll tell us the name of the book he was a technical advisor on. Anyway,
Palamic. Okay, Matthew.
yeah, but he's another guy that's a pretty prolific collector, and is also a wealth of information about the early days.
And Lee Wilson. Lee Wilson is watching, our guest yesterday. Hello from Kennedy Center Visitors Complex. Great episode. And you did have a good episode too yesterday. We really enjoyed Lee being on the show, and we've made a friend with him there. Connie McDaniel, you met Connie here a little bit ago. She said, hello, Mitch, great show. Dave Hammond.
Dave Hammond, yeah. That's his
Matthew
friend,
said.
yeah.
Okay.
Matthew Palomic's friend. These are the guys that were, they both were technical advisors on this book. His name fails me for the moment.
Here's a question, something that Tom Celentano commented on. He said it was a great enshrinement for the Hall of Fame this year. You and your wife are in a fortunate position that you go to a lot of these, even the black tie events on there. Tell people who don't have an opportunity to go what it's like to go to the scholarship, the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation's Hall of Fame. Once a year they induct 2 astronauts, 3 if there's a tie. That's how it is. I found that out from Caroline Shoemaker, the CEO and president, because I was kind of grilling her when I met her. I saw her last week about, so-and-so should be in the Hall of Fame, and why isn't so-and-so in the Hall of Fame? And she says, Mark, we got so many astronauts that are worthy, but they only induct 2 a year, and if there's a tie between one of them, then they put the third one in.
Okay.
So, but tell people why you're attracted to go to it, and a little flavor of the whole.
So first, it's always about the people, right? So the friends, of course, it's always special to see friends who are people that you see at space events. But it's also the opportunity to share space with these legends. I pretty much have been fortunate enough to meet most of the moonwalkers. The only moonwalkers that I didn't meet were Alan Shepard, Jim Irwin, and John Young.
Oh, wow.
Otherwise, I've met the rest of them. But what is it like? It's really, it's quite an honor is what it is. I was at the National Aviation Hall of Fame induction last year for Fred Hayes.
Okay. In Dayton, Ohio.
No, last year they did it in D.C.
Oh, okay.
It was the first time in years they did it there. And of course now I know that Tom Celentano was just in Ohio, so they went back to Ohio. But it's an opportunity to meet just amazing people, because you meet people who have done amazing things. So for instance, I went to the National Space Club, did the annual Robert H. Goddard Memorial Dinner with a friend, said that somebody we all know here was inducted or was received an award, and that was John Zarella.
Yeah.
The CNN correspondent, and the
Hope Z-Man's watching.
Yeah, and then John, of course, is prolific in the space. He routinely hosts space events here on the Space Coast, and I'm sure in other places. But to be able to be there with him and celebrate that achievement with him and friends and his friends and our friends, and to be able to meet people that did amazing things. The Robert H. Goddard, the trophy went to the team that was responsible for this vehicle that picked up a piece of an asteroid and brought it back.
Oh yeah, Osiris-Rex.
Yes, and amazing people to the things that these people do. I mean, I was a lawyer. There's a reason why I didn't go into engineering. I couldn't add, right? You can't do math. You're not going to go far in the engineering.
Pretty sure you can add up your bank account there, Mitch.
Or divide by thirds. If you're doing, anyway. But that's the thing that's amazing about these events, are the incredible people that you get to meet. And
yeah, I agree with you. It's more than just the astronauts and kind of rubbing elbows with some of our heroes. It is the people who are there, like your Chris Callies.
Exactly.
We were talking about that wrote the book about his youth.
About whose youth?
he wrote the book about his youth and being a space geek, but the book was about growing up in the '60s. Oh,
It'll come to you.
We-
Oh,
well,
oh,
we talked-
David Chudwin.
yeah, David Chudwin.
That's right.
Chudwin there.
Yeah, I was a teenage space reporter,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the magical
I mean, you meet
decade.
people like that, and Chudwin's a great guy. He's a big, he's on Space Hipsters and other influencing Facebook pages a lot, and you know, you love to meet him. Emily Carney, we were friends with, but it's also putting the face with the people that you meet, and
Yes.
having a meal with them or hanging out for a cocktail
Right.
or whatnot, and then you see 5 or 6 astronauts walk by, and you know, it's just a great timer. I'm going to have you read that. Dean Babcock says, because of the ASF, I have been able to meet many of my astronaut heroes, and it is a fabulous organization, the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, now in its 40th year,
Right.
and they've given out millions of dollars in scholarships, including to Christina Cook, who is spent time on the International Space Station with Jessica Meir, did 3 spacewalks, and she's the Artemis 2 astronaut that's in queue to be launched a year from now, hopefully. And just had my daughter Jessica coming on late. Hi, honey, we love you and love my grandbabies, McKinley and Macy there. So I know you got your hands full, Jessica. So thank you for tuning in today with one of Daddy's new best friends here.
All right.
Okay, a great guy that's just like your dad. He loves space and he loves talking about it. Mention that right there. Read that and then you
Okay.
comment on that. Well, I want to say welcome everybody to our program. If you got some questions, do that. We're enjoying this conversation with Mitch Rothman. Marty Winkel is on our board here. Marty and I have done 4.5 years of Stay Curious, born out of the pandemic, because we felt like people would listen to space history and space news and then be attracted to our humble nonprofit here. And it's worked out pretty good. It's Mitch, it's a labor of love, but there's some labor involved in it for sure.
Yes.
As you well know.
Well, it is again. You need to get here if you're a space fanatic. It's really a special museum. It really is, because it's got some really unique objects here. So I love coming
So
here.
what we enjoy is bringing in the space workers. Okay, it's not about us here at the museum as much as it's like you and people we've had here like Mike Chinelli, Terry White. Mike Chinelli's over the lessons learned at NASA. Terry White is the I call him the head garage mechanic of the shuttle garages, the OPFs, Orbital Processing Facilities. Nick Thomas, the astronaut wrangler. We've interviewed a dozen astronauts for sure, but I think Marty would agree. We enjoy you space workers just as much as the astronauts. The astronauts are interviewed all the time. We had 100-year-old W.O. Brown on here, who in 1962 or 3 went over to Turkey and dismantled the nuclear weapons that we had over there, because we kicked them out, the nuclear weapons out of Cuba, but it wasn't very well
Right, they
known
were
that we had just
Turkey.
as many in Turkey, pointing at Moscow. People like that we just love and will continue to bring to you on Stay Curious. So you've got a
Yeah. So Matt Palomic was reminding me that the name of the book that he and Dave Heyman were the technical editors for was "Shoot for the Moon" by James Hansen.
Oh yes,
Which, of course, who wrote First Man.
right.
And he writes here, Matt writes here that Michael Collins said, quote, it is the best book on Apollo that I have read, which is James, I'm sorry, it's not James Hansen, it's James Donovan.
Donovan, okay.
James
Yeah,
Donovan,
yeah.
who didn't write First Man. Okay.
Thank you, Matthew, for there. And my granddaughter Bop says, hey Bop, hope you're being good for mommy today. So she's got 2 toddlers there on her hands.
Okay. Keeping her
And
busy.
love you all up there in Bristol, Tennessee, up there. And I love going up to Tennessee, not just to seeing them, but to see some land that's not flat for a
Yes,
while up there.
yes.
So, well, let's look at your scrapbook. You brought a nice scrapbook along here with you, as you should, and let's talk about some of the famous people and places you've been there. Now, he was a trial lawyer, folks. So, see, when he was early in his career, he had black hair, and
no
now not
tie.
so much.
Right. I'm happy to have hair.
Yeah,
That's
happy,
why
just like me.
I always said it.
So this is birthday boy Ed Mitchell.
Yes, that's Ed Mitchell. This is I don't remember what event this was for, but this has got to be 2010-ish. This is here at it was an ASF event, Astronaut Scholarship Foundation. Had a chance to and as you know, whenever you have a chance to, we dined with him that night, Paul and I, and his son was there with him, who was a young man who's since passed, actually passed before Ed passed. But Ed we were talking about how life began on Earth. And he postulated over dinner that a sperm cell could have been on a rock that came from who knows where and made its way to Earth, and life proliferated. Anyway, it was interesting conversation with a man who walked on the moon.
Yeah.
To be able to talk about those types of things.
You know, we talk about Mitchell. I think there were 7 rookies on the Apollo program, and 5 of them were
on his
Moonwalk.
flight.
Yeah, they were all rookies basically, except 15 minutes for Al Shepard.
Right, that's true.
Which was the most pinpoint landing Apollo 14 ever.
Right.
Of course, he is known for his Noetic Institute of paranormal psychology stuff.
Yeah.
He believed in UFOs. He tried to do an ESP experiment from the moon that didn't work out so right because they didn't know how the timing was on Earth.
There's a funny story about that with Alan Shepard. So I guess they're back now because they've remained, and that was the last crew to remain in isolation.
Right, yeah.
So during the isolation, he's reading I've read this somewhere, that he was reading the newspaper, was Alan Shepard, in this facility where they're sort of stuck together. And he's reading this thing about, it was in the paper, it was reported in the media at the time, that there was this ESP experiment. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a lot of nonsense. What are they talking about? And sure enough, it was Ed Mitchell, and he had no idea.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think he was that impressed with it.
No, I don't think anybody was that impressed with it, to tell you the truth. But he was a good guy, a great supporter of the American Space
he
Museum.
was a
Ed
great
Mitchell,
guy.
who'd be, 94 years old today, or I think we said on there. And I'll have another Ed Mitchell story here when we see another guy there. There's the late Tom
boy.
Stafford, born on this date, would be 94 years old, I think, today.
So I was at the General's.
We always call him the General, don't we?
Yeah. I was at the General's Museum in April after he passed, to pay my respects. He was lying in state there at his museum, which, and I had a chance to meet Max Airy there.
Yeah, who just retired as the director there.
Legend in the museum.
In more ways than once, but he founded the Cosmosphere.
Yeah, that's right.
In there.
And was responsible for the Liberty Bell 7 being where it is, essentially.
And I got to meet him a couple times too, and I've been to the Stafford Museum 4 times. It's in Weatherford, Oklahoma, just outside of his hometown, outside Oklahoma City, which Oklahoma City has another fabulous space museum.
In fact, Skylab 4 spacecraft is in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
But it's on its way to Stafford's museum.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
They've got a full-scale mock-up of not the ASTP. I was thinking of something else. They got, anyways, the first fuel cell I saw was there at the Oklahoma City Museum.
Okay.
Too. They got an F1 engine. They got.
Okay.
It's really a good place there. So. But yeah, God bless
his
General
museum
Stafford.
is another one.
It's my top 5.
It's in the middle of nowhere, but it's near Tulsa. It's near the Cosmosphere.
Yeah, so Interstate 40.
You can hit.
Hit 3 hours.
3 good museums in 4 hours.
That's right. And if you're at the Cosmosphere, you're an hour and a half from President Eisenhower's hometown.
I've been there, Abilene.
Yeah,
Abilene, Kansas.
Yeah, isn't that a cool?
Yeah, and which is only 100 miles from Harry Truman's hometown of Independence, Missouri.
Yeah. I've been to both of them. I had a niche to go to presidential tombs for a while there.
Okay.
Well, here's some more of your scrapbook there.
That's a special shot. That is Scott Carpenter. So, as you know, I spent some time in Colorado. I have a home there. Scott was very good friends with my neighbor in Colorado. My neighbor is a diver, and of course Scott was he the only, well, not the only, because somebody else, I don't know, there's somebody else now who was an astronaut, aquanaut. So he was the first, but I think
Not
that,
counting the Nemo astronauts
oh,
that were in the Nemo program down there at,
there's somebody newer,
okay.
more recent. I think it's a woman, in fact. I can't remember who it is.
You said this was close to his...
This is in Vail. This was about a month before he passed.
Oh,
My
wow.
neighbor
He
called.
really aged well.
Yeah, he was 88 when he passed.
Wow.
He was, and my neighbor was at his home in Vail. He calls me. He said, "Hey, you want to come over and say hey to Scott?" So I went over. He was very gracious, and he had amazing stuff in his on the walls of his living room, where he had, you know, the sort of the gifts of his career, if you will, you know, stuff given to him by contractors and things like this. But we had a chance. I spoke to him about.
As space geeks know, set this up.
Yeah, so
he had one
he
flight.
had one flight. He flew the second manned orbital flight after John Glenn, and in fact, Deke Slayton was supposed to fly Delta, his Mercury Delta spacecraft, and just a couple of months before the flight, he was grounded with the AFib, a heart condition, and Scott moved into that slot. He was backing him up. Anyway, Scott got the flight, only flew the one time, and famously, or perhaps infamously, landed about 250 miles from the target landing zone.
We were worried he was dead on Walter
Right.
Cronkite we were talking
Yeah,
about. They
Walter
didn't know if he was dead or alive. But
reporting that we may have lost our first astronaut.
yeah.
Because the story goes that during the flight of John Glenn, every time he saw these fireflies flying around the spacecraft and was captivated. They didn't know what it was. And so Scott he saw the same thing, spent the time chasing these fireflies. And the story goes that using the reaction control system fuel, he ran low and anyway had a problem coming back and had to, because of the way he came, the timing of things was such that he missed the landing zone by 250 miles. Turns out that the fireflies were nothing more than ice crystals that formed on the external skin of the spacecraft. And every time
banged
they
the side
hit
of the wall and he saw some fly off.
and they would fly off. And of course, at the time they
so
didn't
Chris
know.
Kraft thought he did a little bit too much sightseeing.
Chris Kraft vowed he wouldn't fly again, and Scott and I talked about this. And so what he told me was that he didn't have an axe to grind. These are his words. I didn't, you know. So he didn't have an axe to grind with Chris Kraft. I don't know if that means that because Chris didn't actually do that, or if he said, you know, after 88 years, can't have it all. But he did point out to me how special that 3-orbit flight was, with all the things that he had done throughout his career, including spending 30 days underwater.
Yeah, after his Mercury career, he was 30 days underwater
With
as
Sea
an
Lab, with the
astronaut.
Navy Sea Lab program. He left NASA to join that.
In 1960.
It's coming up, actually. The anniversary of the end of that Sea Lab mission is coming up in the next week or so.
And how many years? What year was that Sea Lab mission?
Well, he would have left NASA he flew in 62. So I would say 63, 4, something like that.
It was the mid-60s.
Well,
that was a very bold thing to do back then.
Anyway, but it was amazing, frankly, to be able to talk to Scott, and then he tells me about, you know, with all the stuff that he had done. That 3-orbit flight was something he would never forget.
You know, he looks like a real gracious man there.
He was
spend
very
time
gracious.
With you and
Yeah, that's a great shot. That was that of course is Apollo 17 Commander Gene Cernan and Jack Lausma, who flew on Skylab, and of course was a shuttle commander.
Yeah, Jack's only 24 years old. Everybody, you know that, don't you?
That's right. That's right.
He was a leap year baby.
That's right.
He's really 88, but and we lost Gino a couple years ago.
Gino
he
had
really
a
did a
great
great
sense of
job
humor.
of promoting the Apollo program. There's a beautiful video of him talking about it and everything.
A great sense of humor. Love to talk about it. Love to talk about the human side of it. You know, and I remember him recounting one evening about almost as though it hadn't occurred to him in all these years, the fact that he commanded 17. It may have been different if Elliot C. and Charles Bassett
absolutely
hadn't gotten killed.
Oh, there've been a lot
in the run up to
different
Gemini 9.
Yeah. There's a shot that all of you've met Uncle Al
And
have been in that scene a time or two.
and my good friends Don and Herb, that is, we're hanging on his every word. You could see we're having a lot of laughs. That's got to be. I think that's 2009. I think that's 40th anniversary of Apollo 12, hosted by ASF here on the Space Coast.
Another great supporter of the American Space Museum in our early days, 20-some years ago when they were building Spaceview Park. Famous story around here, Mitch, is that Edgar Mitchell and Al Warden were at the same event, raising money for the $1 million that they got to build Spaceview Park. Edgar Mitchell gets up and he starts talking about UFOs and paranormal psychology and stuff like that. And then Al Warden gets up afterwards and he looks over from the podium and looks over it and gestures to Ed Mitchell and says, "You know, all that stuff Ed was talking about, that's just pure BS."
Very Al.
But he didn't use BS.
Also very Al.
Yeah, also very Al on there. And everybody just cracked up laughing. And Edgar Mitchell took that. I asked people about Edgar, and he just said, hey, if they don't want to believe it, they don't want to believe it. You know, but I do. So we miss Al Warden. He died right in the COVID pandemic time.
I think he may have been ASF chair at this time.
Yeah, he was very involved with the Scholarship Foundation back then.
That's Jim Lovell. I met him in the same place you met. I'm trying to think who you met in the men's room.
Oh, yeah, right. You met him in the men's room?
Yeah.
We were talking about that when we had lunch.
Yeah. This is, again, it's one of the, I want to say that's probably 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the celebration of Apollo 12. Yeah, he was
he's still alive,
96.
Yeah, he's the oldest living space traveler.
Right.
His buddy, Frank Borman, friend for life, we lost him about a year ago. Yes, I went in Tennessee. Our astronomy club was going to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville to see Harrison Jack Schmidt, talk. Harrison Schmidt, the geologist, taught a class for about 3 weeks. About 2 weeks he'd go down and teach geology class for one of his professors down there who was expert in lunar regolith. So we're going down there to see Harrison Schmidt, and so I gotta go in the restroom, and I bop in the bathroom real quick and go up to the urinal, and a gentleman stands up beside me at the urinal, and I turn around and there's Jack Schmidt beside me, and I said, "Hello, sir." I said, "I'll be sure and wash my hands twice before I see you outside." That's what, I remember saying that to him. He come outside and we shook hands. He laughed and he said, "That reminds me what my commander Gene told me. Never walk past a bathroom. You will regret it." Whether you have to go or not, go in there and try, because someone's going to buttonhole you and chew your ear off, and you're going to have to pee so bad you're going to just run to one.
So it's another thing we have in common. We both met astronauts standing
standing at the urinal. There you are.
It's actually here at the museum. That's in November last year.
We touted the Skylab video by our friends.
Dwight and
Dwight and Alexandra. Had a great event with them and Jack Lausma.
Searching for Skylab.
He was. I got that. I usually have that within arm's length to show that off when we talk about it. But you can. Searching for Skylab is the best program you're going to ever see, and you can upload it by just searching it, and you'll find it in there. But I was so pleasantly surprised by this intelligent man. He's
very friendly. He was telling some great stories about Wally Schirra while he was here, talking about how Wally liked to hog the simulator.
Oh, really?
That, Frank. So they were training. He was explaining to me that they were training between the Frank Borman's Apollo, it turned out to be Apollo 8, and Apollo 7, because originally they were going to be 8, right? So they were going to be sandwiched between the crew of 9. once they became Apollo 9, he was saying how when Frank Borman, when his crew had time at that simulator, they were at the simulator at the appointed time and gone when the time was up. And he was explaining how Wally would be up, just having fun and talking with folks while they were waiting for the simulator.
Yeah. Well, of course, he was Apollo 9, the first checkout of the Grumman lunar module, and
First lunar module pilot.
that's right. And he could have segued to Apollo 12, and I know you often wonder sometimes what happened down the road, because once you were on a backup of a mission or another mission, you usually could be chosen for 3 missions from there.
Yeah.
He could have been a logical choice for Apollo
Well,
12.
he famously got space sick.
Yeah, he did get space sick, and that could have been a factor there on there.
There
So
was some concern about
couple, there's your lovely wife.
Yeah, that's Paula and I in. So we went to Tulsa to, when we celebrate museums, we support museums, we support this museum and supported Tulsa.
Financially, he supports our museum.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for that.
And Tulsa as well. We raised money. What you see there is Bill Pogue's. Bill Pogue is a native of Oklahoma. He grew up. In fact, there's a little airstrip near Tulsa. That's his name. It's got the Pogue name on it. Bill Pogue had donated a bunch of stuff to the Tulsa Air and Space Museum, and I went there just like today. I went there to meet, and be taken on a tour of the museum and what have you. And when I got there, this suit that you see in that display cabinet was folded up, not much bigger than this piece of paper, 8 by 10, in a little case.
Really?
And I thought, a light bulb went off. I thought we can help them raise money. And so we've raised money. That display case that you see there was, there's going to be 2 additional ones just like it, to house 2 more suits.
Oh, great for you. That's a beautiful display.
So that
case,
suit
too.
you see was worn. He wore that on Skylab during his 84-day flight in 1973-74.
Did y'all catch what Mitch and Paula did there? They saw this spacesuit folded up in a little case and said that needs to be displayed, and bingo.
Well, and
But what an attraction I'll bet it is to the
well,
visitors.
I will tell you that they really caught the bug in Tulsa, because now they're building an entire new space exhibit. They were able to get an F1 engine. As I'm sure you know, NASA puts out lists. I'm learning they put out lists to museums and say, hey, this is available. Do you want this? So I know in Tulsa they got an F1 engine and an H1 engine, or maybe it was a J2. I can't remember. It was either an H1 or a J2 and an F1. And right now, Bill Moore, the space historian, who is also wrote with Fred Hayes, Fred's book Never Panic Early, is working with Tulsa to put together the display boards for the new space exhibit. We're going back there in April, in November, for a screening of The Artist and the Astronaut, and it'll be the hard opening of the new Pogue stuff.
Well, there's a new destination for you all out there to put on your bucket list.
And it's only an hour and a half from either Tulsa, from either the Cosmosphere or from Weatherford.
Awesome.
So great place to go.
Yeah, that is a
It's a
great
neat
place
museum.
to go.
That's in San Diego. That was this summer.
Which module's that?
That's Apollo 7.
Okay.
And you can see the color of it. It didn't sustain the same type of heat on re-entry as the returning.
Now, is this Sally Ride's museum? San Diego Museum?
This is the San Diego Air and Space Museum.
Okay.
Wally Schirra was friends with this museum. I'm sorry, that's not Apollo 7. That's Apollo 9. Apollo 7's in Dallas.
I wanted to grab what you're holding there. Grab over there, Mitch. I've got underneath there. What did I do with them? Marty, you got any coffee over there? Mitch has got a good marketing tool.
Check the bag here, Marty. I think I put some in the bag there.
And that's what you're holding there.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Let me put that up there. Yeah, tell us about.
And kudos to Danny's Rocket Ranch. I met Danny in Tulsa. He was there at the Pogue event. Danny is he bills himself as a space-themed food entrepreneur. And this is a cup of freeze-dried coffee.
There's
That's
Danny on the back there.
Danny is known
Right
for
there.
he 10% of the profit of the sale of his products. He does a lot of this freeze-dried stuff, drink mixes, salsa mix. This is private label coffee. 10% of his profits are used to send kids to space camp. He's in the Space Camp Hall of Fame for having sent over 5,000 kids to space camp in Huntsville.
Wow, that's
So
crazy. 5,000
it's a great
kids.
story. And then I use it as a business card. It's got the QR code. You can have your cup of coffee in the morning and check out the day's history on Facebook by scanning the QR code, or go to the Facebook, the YouTube channel and check out a video.
Instant coffee, and they're brilliant. What a nice idea there. Brilliant.
Yeah, and it helps, and it's also, again, it's consistent with this whole notion of celebrating space and space history.
We got Doug Forrest on the ball telling us Apollo 9 is in San Diego, and Apollo 7 is in a museum near Love Field in Dallas.
The flight.
And,
I was
aviation. The
Frontiers of Flight.
Yes,
I
you've been there.
I was just there.
Oh, I love that place.
It's a great museum.
It was a great museum. See the pancake airplane there?
Yes,
and all of the Antarctica stuff. They've got a lot of birds, Antarctica stuff.
It was neat. We were taking, Paula and I were there, and the
And the Apollo 7's there.
Apollo 7. What confused me was, of course, Schirra flew on 7, but he's a friend. He was from this. He lived in the San Diego area and became a friend of the San Diego Air and Space Museum, and was responsible for helping get Apollo 9 to San Diego.
Now, at the frontiers of aviation at Love Field, famous for that's where President Kennedy was,
Right.
In there. What'd you notice about the Apollo 7 that's unique to any other display you ever come across?
Well, so what I noticed was the skin.
No, you could touch it.
Oh, okay. Well, there was that too.
There's an actual ladder that goes up to the hatch, and the hatch is open, and the plexiglass covers the interior. And I looked at the docent and I said, "Can I touch it?" And he said, "We welcome you to touch it." So I'm hanging off the edge of the hatch. They're looking inside of there. It's the only, and you can touch it on the outside too. They allow you to do that.
Well, the docent shared with me a story. If you look at that spacecraft closely, if you're going to Dallas, look closely at the window. One of the windows
I know what you're gonna say.
in the spacecraft, they were photographing it, and they used hot lights. And believe it or not, these lights, this thing flew through the atmosphere and survived the heat of reentry.
Yeah.
But the heat of the lights damaged
The window, it
the
made a
window.
bubble in the area in the
Yeah, you
window
saw it.
there.
Yeah,
And
exactly
that
right.
was up in Canada. Okay.
Oh, that's where
it was on display in Canada.
That's right. He did say that.
And the reason why it's there is Walt Cunningham's wife was friends with some VIP woman in Canada. Somebody's
That's right.
wife.
Walt was responsible.
And Walt Cunningham and his wife were responsible for bringing that to
Right, that's
Love
right.
Field on there. I believe we're going to see
Apollo
a picture
7.
of Walt.
Yeah, Walt. Yeah.
There you are.
that was
Best of the Nines.
a great event. That was San Diego this summer. The event of the summer. I actually saw Charlie Duke this summer also. This event is at the San Diego Air and Space Museum, July 20th, the 55th anniversary of the landing of Apollo 11, and Buzz Aldrin was there. And Buzz Aldrin looked great.
That's what you said.
94, was in good voice, delivered 5 or 6 minute.
Had a flashy
address.
vest on, as I recall. or
Well, he was
something.
wearing his red, white, and blue flag, suspenders and bow tie,
Yeah.
and his Presidential Medal of Freedom that he
Oh,
got
yeah.
from President
Yeah,
Obama.
he
a few
wears
years
that.
ago. I mean, President Trump.
Yeah, that
few
was
years ago.
awesome.
There's Walt, and he's
Okay.
wearing his space themed tie. So Walt, part of I collect. You know, as you know, I've collect.
Walt Cunningham,
He
Apollo 7.
Apollo 7 commander.
No,
and
pilot.
I that's right.
Yeah.
Of course, Schirra was
Wally
the
was
commander.
commander.
But he commissioned a company that made these beautiful Apollo themed glasses. They're like tumblers,
Oh, really?
cocktails. I wish I had one, but anyway, kind of neat. Walt was a neat guy.
Well, we got a lot of great people watching today's show, as I knew that you'd all want to talk to this influencer here.
I see
We
Robert
got the-
Law. So Robert isn't he in Scotland?
Yeah, Robert Law's in
I'll
Scotland.
be there next week.
Oh, you will.
I'll
He's
be
in
in Scotland.
Dundee.
Okay,
He's
we're
in Dundee.
actually Paula and I are going to Scotland on Thursday. We're meeting some folks from the Facebook
Uh-huh.
group there.
Outside of those that we've mentioned, we've got ballistic bookworms on here. Umberto Caldeas, the second.
Umberto, he'll be here for for Shuttle Fest.
Okay,
He's a
Umberto.
friend, Umberto.
Look forward to meeting you. Neil 1030, he's always straightening us out. Neil said Chris Kraft was quite a hard-edged guy. And yes, he was. And Neil, it took somebody like that. When you look at the history like we have, and you got some real heavy-handed leaders like Chris Kraft and Rocco Petrone.
They were
And-
demanding.
and-
They
yeah.
expected.
And I'm thinking of the other one, Tom O'Malley, particularly. But it was a different era. You couldn't get away with chewing somebody up and down out in the hallway for doing something wrong. You get pulled into human resources real quick that way in today's world.
yeah.
But I know for a fact some people that really knew Chris Kraft very well. It was all because he knew what was at stake, and that was humans' lives.
Yeah,
on there.
and that was the thing. I mean, they expected their people to perform to their best.
Umberto says in relation, this Apollo 7 they put a light, a really like movie light,
Right.
and the window to film stuff inside, and it got so hot that it bubbled up the glass. Umberto says, awesome story. Remember, even though the temperature
right.
is high during reentry,
That's right.
the heat transfer is low at the window due to the air not being very dense.
Yeah.
So,
By the
Great
way,
in there.
Umberto's an MIT grad.
okay. Well, he's pretty smart then.
Yeah,
And Lee Wilson has to chime in there that yes, Apollo 14 is at the Kennedy Space
yes,
Center.
it is. Yeah, he would
And
know that.
they used to have like a velvet rope around it, and you could get closer to it. But not to be missed. What a wonderful Saturn V exhibit, bar none in the world out there. There's 4 moon rocks within, and you can touch one of them with your own fingers out there. They got it under a glass.
Yes,
You've seen
yes.
that in there. So appreciate everybody watching today. Cliff Watson, Cynthia Rossi, Vince, Matthew Palomic there. Glad that Lloyd Franklin's found us before. We enjoy seeing him around
Good to see
there,
Lloyd.
and all the rest of you that we've talked about here. Got one other scrapbook photo for you there, my friend, and of course it's the man.
Yeah, it's the one that everybody goes for. So I met Neil a few times. Interesting story about Neil. So my dad was in the Air Force. You're familiar with the P-51 Mustang?
Yes, sir.
Okay, most people. So North American, who built the P-51, made the F-82, which was the twin Mustang. So imagine a Mustang side by side, joined together in one wing, and they flew like this. So the pilot would be here, and the radar guy would be in the other cockpit.
Fuselage.
It's really rare aircraft, right? It was the last piston engine that was commissioned by the United States Air Force before they went to jets. Neil Armstrong flew the airplane. It's in the book. It's in First Man. He flew the F-82 when he was with the NACA. And in fact, the plane that he flew, and maybe Tom Celentano saw it because he was just it's at the Museum of the United States Air Force, the Betty Joe. They actually have 2 of the F-82 there, but this was amazing. Right here in Titusville, at the Warbird Museum,
Yeah, right.
is the only F-82 in the world that still flies. It's on display at the Warbird Museum.
Yeah, great friends.
Blew
with
me
the
away. I
Warbirds
couldn't
people.
believe when I got
Wow.
there and saw that,
Yeah.
because there's only one left in the world. But
That's
that was a neat story. So Neil, I'm not an engineer, but so he was explaining to me what they were doing with the airplane. It was a high-speed aircraft at the time. Imagine two P-51s. They go fast, and so they used it because because they could reach those speeds and do certain engineering tests that they needed that type of speed. But so anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting story.
So
that he
tell us a
flew
little
that
bit
airplane.
about, just briefly, what Neil Armstrong was like. He will go down in the human history. His name will be remembered forever. What was that like? How did he handle this aura that was supposedly, he
Well,
brought with
he's
him?
it was famously, right, famously humble. I mean, the humility that he displayed, always thanked, my words, the little people, right? The people that, he always saw, and I think most of the guys did, they saw themselves as the tip of the spear,
Hmm.
that it's all the people behind him that got
Like
him
Marty
there.
Winkel there,
Like Marty Winkle.
and working on Lem number 5. And
Right.
being all over there.
On Beth Page.
Marty's name's on the moon too, by the way.
Okay, I did. Maybe
Yeah.
I heard that.
We talked about
Yes.
that on a piece of mylar that they'll put their names on.
Okay, that's cool.
And
Yeah.
Neil saw it, and you can hear him say, "What?" And then he shuts up there on there. We talked about that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Anyway,
In fact,
he was gracious to speak with. He loved to talk about flying. You know, don't ask him how he felt on the moon, but he was loved to talk about flying, talk about engineering and airplanes, and so he was engaged in that discussion I had with him. It was neat. I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, as Tom Celentano's seen at his fabulous museum in Wapakoneta, Ohio, they even have his bicycle there that he rode out because he couldn't drive a car, so he rode his bicycle
Right.
out to the airport so he could fly his airplane
Right.
out there.
Another great
And
museum, by the way.
yeah, absolutely, and
Well,
just
you've been there many times.
oh
right?
yeah, it's really well done, and it's right off Interstate 75. Actually, it's buried underground.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
under a mound there. And I always like saying this, Mitch. Across the street from the Neil Armstrong Museum is the best Waffle House I've ever eaten in.
That's funny.
Yeah, I love them watching them fry my eggs up in front of me there. I've really enjoyed this, buddy, and I know everybody else has there. We loved all of you that were special to come in on Stay Curious. Maybe you've never found us before, so we hope that you make it a regular stop.
Yes.
We've got over 800 episodes on YouTube. We're very proud of that. We don't do things very polished around here. We just do them very honestly, and we know that you enjoy sometimes this quirkiness that Chris Callie says I have. So on there, but thought it'd be appropriate to end us being space geeks and popularizers of space, that we give a big shout out to the crew, Expedition Crew 71 up there. All right, and right in the middle is Konyenko, who is celebrating 1,004
Amazing.
days in space. He's the most experienced space flyer in the history of all eternity, as Hugh Harris, our great late NASA voice, used to say. There's Sonny and Butch beside him there. There's 2 other Russians in there, okay, just in case you want to know how to get along with your superpowered neighbors there. I love Tracy Caldwell Dyson in the middle, and Jeanette Epps up at the top up there. But there's also 3 more on there. I couldn't find a good picture, Mitch, but we have 12 human beings on the space station, and 69-year-old Don Pettit on the left, and 2 Russians joined him up there. And we'll be talking about Don Pettit for the next few months for sure. 69 years
It's
old.
amazing.
One of the most eclectic astronauts. He's one of these guys that's like they call him the MacGyver of astronauts, all right? And he does these wonderful photography in space. And above him is Mike Barrett, another senior citizen who's 65 years old in space. Okay, so you got 2 senior citizens in space among the 12 humans that are living on the International Space Station. So comment about that. Taking us out of here, brother.
Of course, I'm a student of the old, right? So you can't think of these men being up there at their age and not think of John Glenn, who of course first American
77
to orbit Earth, and then years later flew at age 77, and evidently has cleared the path.
Yeah.
For these men to be
Pettit
up
will
there.
actually celebrate. I think he's
Yeah,
coming
he's
back just short of his 70th
yeah,
birthday.
right.
Depends on how long he stays up
So
there.
that's well, we were talking about, just to digress for a moment, we were talking earlier about the progress of space travel, and the idea that if in 1965 a Gemini two-man crew flew and had the same experience that Butch and Sonny are having, the outcome may have been a whole lot different.
Absolutely.
Among other things, they didn't have a space station they could go camp out at for what? Now they'll be up there for 300 days or something, right?
They're in their
By the time they get back?
114th day. Yeah, they'll be up there for 250 days.
Yeah. So, the
February.
if in a Gemini spacecraft, there was one way up and one way back, and so I think it speaks volumes of the progress. It just and it's important to celebrate this history, because it's that history that made what we're seeing today all possible.
That's absolutely right. And Shirley Newman says, love the program. Thanks for sharing the memories. Matthew Polomek says, thanks for putting on an excellent show, Mitch and Mark. We appreciate you all watching. I hope you come back and watch some of our other programs anytime you're bored. You can watch us on YouTube, then watch Mitch on YouTube, or watch Mitch first and then watch us on there. We're doing the same thing, promoting what is America's greatest moment, the American space program. Bar none. This is this 1,000 years from now, this is what America will be known for, I think. What do you think?
Well, it's amazing.
Maybe 500 years.
Yeah, in 500 years, Neil Armstrong will be a household name.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
like Christopher Columbus is a household name.
There you go. Great analogy there. Thank you so much, my friend.
My pleasure.
We've had one of our longer programs, but we know everybody enjoyed every minute of it, including Ronnie McGowan. Says, great presentation. Thank you, Ronnie McGowan, for coming in there. Oh, your sister?
My sister in Indiana.
All right. Well, nice to meet you.
Marty,
you
Shirley is my mother-in-law.
Oh,
I got fans all over the country. Shirley Newman.
Well, we'll have you back on to boost our numbers
all
up
right.
there. No, we hope to have Mitch on Google Meets. We've done that a few times, and Marty and I need to get back into that. So we look forward to maybe bringing you in here. We know that you'll be here on some of the events around here, and get you back in here talking about
for
Space
Shuttle
Geek
Fest.
stuff. Yep, Shuttle Fest. We sold over 30 tickets at $90 for
my space friends across the country who are tuned in. Come on out. It's going to be a great event here on the Space Coast.
Shuttle Fest 4. We're celebrating the 35th anniversary of the Hubble telescope. Already got astronaut Don Thomas, who has nothing to do with the Hubble, signed up to do a book signing and talk about his Woodpecker mission, STS-70. So thank you for letting me plug that. Marty, you got a comment or question here to our wonderful guest today?
Nope, nothing. I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you for a great job there, Marty. And as usual, you saw me on the fly throw us together here, another program. And we're so grateful for all of you watching Stay Curious. We're going to pick up on some space news on the coast here. We're going to watch a launch here in about an hour. We got a Falcon 9 going up with a Galileo mission. Not the going to Jupiter again, but a different satellite. And just appreciate it, Mitch. Thank you so much for supporting our museum. You're one of the people that talk about us all the time and tell people that they got to get connected with us. And our humble nonprofit certainly needs all the eyes we can get on us, as we're constantly raising money to stay open and do programming and reach out to all of you. So thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Marty. And thank you all for watching. Until next time, I'm Marquette saying, I can't wait to bridge the space between us.